Welcome back to the Willy Bragg Show. I've been on hiatus for quite a few days, actually about a week. Easily explain. We had a snowstorm, and the snowstorm caused my work schedule to be a little bit altered. Thus, meaning that when it became altered, meaning that I had to postpone, and I got a little too tired, basically. So, with all that happening, I was just like, well, let me just go ahead and start posting when I get the energy and everything gets kind of back to normal. So things are kind of back to normal right now. So, how are you this evening? I hope you are all doing well under the circumstances. And mind you, I enjoyed the snow. This was actually the closest thing that I had to a normal winter in years and years. What I experienced this year almost felt like the winters I experienced in the 1980s. Maybe a slightly aggressive, the snow was slightly less aggressive than what I experienced in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, because they were a little more, the snow stuck around a little more. It was thicker. It was thick, stuck around more, dry, and it basically, where I live, would be shut down for about a week or so. Which we were kind of shut down for a few days here and there. We had some, closings and things like that, because people don't know how to behave in North Carolina when there's just even some dusty flakes. Everybody would be like, "Oh no, the sky's falling and everything," and the dumbasses that slide their cars into the ditch and slide into other vehicles. And it doesn't have to be that way if you need to get on the road. So that's basically it in a nutshell. What happened? Restaurants closing down. I mean, it was just kind of like, wow, wowzer. Suffice to say, I had some stories that I was going to share, and those stories are in the back burner because they're kind of, I'm not going to say timeless, but the relevancy can be put, it's at any time right now. So they may be in the next week or two shared stories. But for right now, I have a week's lineup right now, outline for y'all. So, so there will be a video pretty much every day this week as far as makeup time is concerned. So anyway, let's get to the meat and potatoes of what we need to talk about. We're going to talk about Bernie Sanders today. And let's see. He sides with Bree, says Yareri Rivas. Do I side with Bree? For the most part, I like Brianna Joy Gray, but we'll be talking about Brianna Joy Gray in this video, along with other people in relation to Bernie Sanders. And I have another Bernie Sanders video that I will be sharing with y'all on Thursday. So what I'll be saying today, I'm going to try to be careful what I say, because I don't want it to repeat myself. And if I end up repeating myself, there will be another video. So basically, I guess the best way to start is with this video in relation to Bernie Sanders, because it's a great segue into what we need to discuss. And this is from Turncoat Don. It's called Mission Impossible. And it's called Mission Impossible, Reform the Democratic Party. Very relevant.
fuck it all.
Well, third party.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
That was from Turncoat Don. It's from a couple of years ago. It's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. I will, when I get a chance, put down the information for Turncoat Don. Do follow him on Twitter. Do follow him on YouTube. He is hilarious. He points out the hypocrisy of shit libs. We are now in the age of Trump. And I know it's easy to beat up on the Democrats when the Democrats are in power because they do absolutely next to nothing. Now that the Republicans are in power, they do something. So, and that's the thing about it is we hate the Democrats because they do nothing, and we hate the Republicans because they do things. And both policies suck for this country. So that's what it comes down to. And how are you doing today, Mr. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show? It's been a while. Green velour background. Nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So basically we're talking about Bernie Sanders today and you know, just some of the bullshit that's about Bernie Sanders that's been increasingly disappointing over the years. I'm very patient with Bernie. I am very patient. I'm probably one of the most patient people in this particular subsection of the left when it comes to Bernie Sanders. Probably too patient. Because, you know, the thing about it is, and the reason I am patient is that I was supportive of Bernie Sanders long before everybody else was supportive of Bernie Sanders. And that would explain it from my perspective. I was inspired to turn into the radical left, what is perceived as the radical left in this country, because of Bernie Sanders. I mean, I was already a liberal, yeah, you could say, that took a leftward turn. When the Bernie movement came along, I didn't think I was going to turn much further left, but I actually turned much further left than I was 10 years ago, even, strangely enough. But you know, here's the thing with Bernie hit a brick wall when he ran for president in 2016 and 2020. He hit a brick wall because he got very, very fucked over twice. Whether you still like Bernie, whether you hate Bernie guts today and you were liking him several years ago, or whether you're sort of like me, that you're kind of frustrated with Bernie, you wish he could do more, but you're just kind of like, man, bro, what the fuck? And I do have a major what the fuck is wrong with you, Bernie, this week. So we have here Greg Walker joined third party. How are you doing today? Truth can't be silenced. Let's see what you have to say. In order to win a general election, is to have a broad appeal, not just to our progressive niche. It's amazing how many people can't grasp that. I get it. Look, there are issues. Nobody, we don't live in a vacuum. There are things that we're not 100% one way or the other. No matter how far on the left or on the right you are, there is something where you will kind of depart from your ideology. I'm a leftist, but I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. I don't own a firearm. I don't particularly love guns, but I'm a Second Amendment absolutist because I think if you fuck too much with the Constitution, it's a slippery slope. I do believe it works in other countries. It just wouldn't work here because of the culture and everything. So we just have a gun culture, unfortunately. So it's one of my more nuanced positions, I guess you could say. And my point is kind of this, Desert Mantis. Bernie is history. I no longer pay him any mind. I don't pay him any money. That came to an end in 2020. And I'll be talking about that in the next few days, but I will, in that next video that I just mentioned. But I will say this, which will be repeated again on Thursday, that for many years, a lot of my tax refunds, a lot of my bonuses, a lot of savings went to Bernie Sanders. And this was before he ran for fucking president. When he was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, when the tax refund time came, I donated $100 to Bernie Sanders, to his reelection campaign. I donated, like $100 for an advertisement for Bernie Sanders in a left-wing magazine that I was affiliated with at the time. That sort of thing. Because I believe in spreading the message. I even had to go and bribe an editor to allow an article favoring Bernie Sanders to be published. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about it is that I was a true believer in Bernie. I was the first online Bernie bro. And as I said, I won't dwell too much into that, other than the money that I spent on him. Never again will I fork out that kind of cash for another human being for an elected office. Never again. Never again. That is a promise. So that's the thing right there. So do I think he's got great policies even now overall? Domestically on economics, he could talk about great policies like there's no tomorrow. But what good is it to talk about great policies when your fucking good friend is Joe Biden? When you're really going to go out and campaign like hell for Kamala Harris? That you've been cucked by Hillary Clinton. What good is it to have those wonderful ideas? It's not doing me any good. It's not doing any of us any good. But the only good Bernie Sanders have done in the past 10 years with this movement, and I'm going to say that I don't think that he was there to sheep herd people into the Democratic Party, because why would he? When he is a senator he's beloved by a lot of people, but he's also hated today by a lot of people. I don't mean right-wing Republicans. We're talking about progressives who hate Bernie Sanders today, because he's forever going to be associated as the man who caused Donald Trump to win in 2016. Not true, but that's what he's going to be associated with. Who caused Donald Trump to win in 2016 were the very people who encouraged him to run in the first place. And that was Bill and Hillary Clinton. The very people that created the birther conspiracy theory in 2008 against Barack Obama. Bernie Sanders, I guess he's trying to look for a sense of purpose after the 2020 campaign. His will was broken, and he knows. He is aware that he let the movement down. He's aware. I think he's more aware of it than AOC. I think AOC cares less about disappointing the movement than he does. And it sounds like I'm defending him probably more than I should be. Still, I'm being charitable. But hear me out. I was angry. I was angry with him this week when he manages to be more wrong than Donald Trump when it comes to ending that fucking war between Russia and Ukraine. You heard me. It hurts me. It should hurt anybody to be more wrong than Donald Trump on Russia, Ukraine. We expect Hillary Clinton to be more wrong than Donald Trump. We expect a normie Republican to be more wrong than Donald Trump on that issue. But for Bernie Sanders to be more wrong than Donald Trump is that's just crazy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a speech he made recently, and I'm going to contrast that with an earlier Bernie Sanders. So let's go with a sad moment in history. And Bernie, this is very sad. This is a new low for you.
For joining me to discuss a very, very serious issue. Yesterday, we witnessed an extremely sad moment in American history. We saw the President of the United States aligning himself with the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to undermine the independence of Ukraine and its democracy.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you right there. Do I like Vladimir Putin? No, I don't. Would I vote for Vladimir Putin if I lived in Russia? No, I wouldn't. Do I think that Vladimir Putin is a dictator? No, I actually don't. He was elected by the people. He was elected by the people. He was with a country that has an electoral system that is actually better than the United States electoral system. We have two fucking parties in this country, Bernie. Independent, socialist. Remember, you ran as an independent. You have independent beside your name because you still believe that there's enough about the Democratic Party that is flawed. There's like, 7, 8 political parties in the Duma in Russia. Sounds like they're doing electoral politics just a little bit better than we are here in the United States, Bernie. And if you want to compare Putin to Trump, our friend Nikki, who lives in Russia today, said that that the Putin government basically allow House mandated a 30-day paid vacation for all workers in Russia. We don't have that here in the United States, Bernie. And that's something you would favor, Bernie. Bernie, your good friend Biden didn't even fight for a goddamn public option. And Barack Obama instituted a Heritage Foundation plan for healthcare reform. Say what you will about Putin. But what does it tell you? When Putin is more progressive on healthcare than Nancy Pelosi. They have socialized medicine in Russia. They retain the socialized medical system. One of the things that was definitely correct about the former Soviet Union, they retained it. Bernie. So, I wouldn't vote for Putin. I'm not exactly crazy about the fact that he went into the Ukraine, but is Putin a dictator? No. Zelensky is a dictator. And Donald Trump was right when he basically asserted that. Like Max Blumenthal said to Aaron Mattei a few days ago, what Donald Trump said was kind of like listening to the Gray Zone if Max and Aaron suffer massive brain injuries. That cracked me up. Max cracks me up sometimes. But anyway, we'll let you go forward.
Let's be clear. Trump is showing us that he sees one of the world's most brutal dictators as his friend and our longtime Democratic allies in Europe as his enemies.
Hold on. Now, just about every country in Europe is better than the United States, okay? I mean, just on healthcare alone, they're all better than the United States. Not one country in Europe has the death penalty. That makes them all better than the United States, Bernie. They have all universal health care, Bernie. Just about all of them have stronger labor unions than we do, Bernie. The thing about it is the Ukraine. The Ukraine is a corrupt country, and NATO never needed to exist. You used to be against NATO, Bernie.
He wants a world that is safe for authoritarians and oligarchs, but extremely dangerous for democracies.
What? Like Netanyahu? Like Netanyahu? Now I know you're one of the more progressive Zionists. You lived in the kibbutz in the 1960s in Israel when they kind of was socialistic at one time. But Bernie, here's the thing. Netanyahu is exactly what you claim Putin is. If you're going to channel your negative energy toward a bad guy, channel it toward Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a dictator. Netanyahu is the embodiment of evil. Netanyahu is a war criminal who the International Criminal Court of Justice were correct to summon for his arrest. And I look forward to the day that he steps into the Western allies, any Western allies around the world, step into their soil, and he's arrested. I know you're not a fan of Putin, Netanyahu either. But you need to call out Netanyahu. I wouldn't call out Putin. I'll take Putin any day over Netanyahu, Bernie.
It will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does.
Duh. Yeah, Trump is a liar. Biden's a liar. They're politicians, Bernie. They all lie.
Yesterday, Trump said that Ukraine started the war. That's not true. Russia.
Okay. It's technically not true. Who started the war was the United States and NATO. Why? I'm going to say something nice about George Herbert Walker Bush, something that I normally seldom do. I usually hate the Bush family, and I still do. But when the Cold War was over, George Herbert Walker Bush, the smarter guy, the smarter older one that just died a few years ago, he and Secretary of State James Baker dealt with the former Soviet Union, and they basically said, hey, East Germany and West Germany are merging as one country. That is as far as NATO is going to go with the former German Democratic Republic, what is called East Germany. They will be part of the German Federal Republic, and there will be no more NATO expansion. The former Warsaw Pact nations, the nations that were allied with the Soviet Unions, will not join NATO. There will be a buffer zone between Russia and what is NATO. NATO should have been dismantled, but if NATO has to still exist, at least maybe Bush was trying to be a good faith actor. Maybe. I'm not blaming him when he made the promise. I don't blame him, because when all the countries started joining NATO, Bush was no longer president. Not that Bush anyway. It started kind of under Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So, and then you got the situation in 2014 when the CIA toppled the government in the Ukraine. And there is a Nazi problem in the Ukraine, Bernie. There is a Nazi problem. And, when it comes to Nazis, I mean, your father had to flee Poland when the Germans came in for obvious reasons. And the thing is that there's going to be a lot of people in danger because with this Azov battalion, and I forgot what the name of what they're renaming themselves, rebranding themselves, but they're They're neo-Nazis. They have the little black sun symbols. They have the swastikas. And they have fucking Jon Stewart give some kind of award to one of those motherfuckers that had a tattoo on his arm. Bernie, are you listening to what you're saying, Bernie?
Russia invaded Ukraine twice, first in 2014 and then again in 2022. Right now,
Bernie, you know who's been suffering from the most in the Ukraine right now? The Russian ethnic minority, the Donbass region. They've been suffering the most. The Russian Orthodox Church has been banned. Bernie. Collective bargaining, something that's very close to your heart, very close to my heart and the audience heart here. Collective bargaining has been banned in the Ukraine. Bernie. 13 political parties have been banned from parliament, including 2 left-wing parties, the Socialist Party, which is center-left, and the supposedly far-left Communist Party. Both of those parties have been banned, along with 11 other political parties. Bernie, I would think that would upset you, Bernie. It's upsetting me. Oppositional media has been suppressed, Bernie. The Russian Orthodox Church has been banned, Bernie. The LGBTQ community are treated far worse in the Ukraine than they are in Russia, Bernie. And fuck Putin for the way he treats the LGBTQ community in Russia. And fuck the Ukraine for the way that they treat the LGBTQ community in the Ukraine, Bernie. They have suspended elections in the Ukraine, Bernie. Which countries consider dictatorship first? What were you saying? I don't know. Call me crazy, but when you ban political parties and you suspend elections and you suppress religious groups and you ban unions and you ban media and you even have an unofficial arm of the government basically targeting journalists around the world, those are elements of authoritarianism, Bernie. I don't understand your logic, Bernie.
now, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine. Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured every single day. Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps. These are
even if that was true, Bernie, even if that was true, what about all the other countries that the United States supports that do a lot of human rights abuses and we never ever hear about, that you never talk about, that it's not in our consciousness that we talk about these things? I don't even address them because, it's so hard to keep up with all these countries that engages in human rights abuse other than the countries that provide the sexy news headline, Bernie.
atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator.
Trump is an asshole. He's a piece of shit, but he is being a stop clock on this one, Bernie. Bernie, it hurts me to say that. Trump is a piece of shit. But this time he's more correct than you are.
That's not true either.
Yeah.
Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact, his approval rating is higher than Trump's. In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function and free and unfettered political debate takes place.
13 political parties, including the Socialist Party and the Communist Party, are not allowed to participate in Ukrainian politics. Bernie.
Trump claimed that our European allies have done little to support Ukraine in its fight against Putin's invasion. He said the United States has contributed 3 times more than Europe. But that's another lie. In fact, Europe has provided more aid to Ukraine than the United States. But it's not just that Trump is lying again. That's not new. It's what this all reveals about where he wants to take our country and, in fact, the entire world. Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin. So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War. Russia holds sham elections every 6 years where Putin wins 90% of the vote.
7 or 8 political parties in the Duma, and you still saying elections are rigged? What about the rigging they did to you, Bernie, in the Democratic Party, Bernie, in 2016, Bernie, and again in 2020, Bernie, and what they did to Marianne Williamson in 2024, Bernie, and what they did to Robert F. Kennedy, Bernie, so much so, Bernie, that they turned Robert F. Kennedy, Bernie, into a Republican, Bernie.
And authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing. There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia.
Yet, Bernie, Ed Snowden had to come to Russia, Bernie, to escape prosecution from the United States, Bernie. And for what, Bernie? For exposing the truth of the surveillance state here in the United States, Bernie. Something that you claim to be, against the suppression of civil liberties, Bernie.
Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are in prison for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Political dissidents are harassed or thrown into jail.
Bernie, half the states in this country have laws that have banned the boycott of Israel, BDS, the movement, Bernie. So we do this sort of thing here, Bernie. I'm not saying what's right, and I'm not disputing you about some of these things, Bernie. But we do some of these things here, Bernie. Let's go and look into our backyard and clean that up before we start criticizing what others do elsewhere, Bernie.
The bravest, people like Alexei Navalny, are killed.
Alexei Navalny was tied with the far right, Bernie. Possibly a white nationalist, Bernie.
Outright. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Putin's brutal regime since his invasion of Ukraine.
A certain person had to move to Russia, Bernie, because of Biden, Bernie. And people going to move out of this country because of Trump, Bernie. People move out of all kinds of situations, for all kinds of reasons around the world. That's nothing new, Bernie.
But Putin has maintained control in his country by offering Russia's oligarchs a simple deal. If you give me absolute power, I'll let you steal as much as you want from the Russian people.
Kind of like the Democrats and Republicans here, Bernie.
And that's why in a country where many are struggling economically, Russian oligarchs have stashed trillions of dollars in offshore tax accounts. That is the Russian leader that Trump admires.
And They have done that here too, Bernie, under Republican administrations, including this administration, and under Democratic administrations. Bernie.
That is the Russian oligarchy that he supports. But that is not the perspective of the American people.
But it is unfortunately parallel the American way, Bernie. Our elected leaders are very corrupt, Bernie. Get your head out of the sand, Bernie. Did Hillary Clinton have a talk with you, Bernie?
We know, and we are proud of, the fact that the United States of America is the longest standing democracy in the world.
Not today, Bernie. Not today.
We know that many hundreds of thousands of brave Americans over the years have fought and died to defend democracy. We also know that our allies in the world are those countries that believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. In this critical moment in our history, I hope that every American, regardless of political perspective, will stand tall and say yes to democracy, no to oligarchy, and no to authoritarianism. Thank you very much.
Bernie is, I have never heard Bernie being so full of shit like I just heard with that speech. That is Bernie being full of shit. I mean, that is Bernie at his lowest right there. I never thought that I would go and criticize Bernie the way I had tonight. I've been frustrated with Bernie for quite some time, letting the movement down in many ways. But Bernie, with his Russia derangement syndrome, they accused Bernie Sanders of being tied in with Russia, along with Jill Stein, along with Tulsi Gabbard, along with Trump. You would think that Bernie Sanders would pause at this, but yeah, as I said, I think that maybe somebody had a talk with him. I mean, people talk. They talk and they talk about scenarios and hypothetical situations. And that's what I think happened. Now, I want you to contrast that with this Bernie. This is that Bernie I don't like. This Bernie I do like. This is the Bernie I miss. This is from 1988, by the way.
Okay, thank you for coming. Actually, everybody who was on the trip is here with the exception of Peter Clavel, who has some personal business that he has to take care of today. What I'd like to do is just say a few words summarizing my impressions and then just open it up to members of the delegation to briefly talk about what they perceived as the highlights of the trip for themselves. And then we'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have. For my own part, this was my first trip to the Soviet Union, and I do not claim that after 10 days there, I am an expert on the Soviet Union. But I did want to share just a few of my observations. The first point that I'd like to make, and I think what surprised me about the trip to the Soviet Union, is the strong degree of friendship and openness that both Soviet officials and ordinary citizens gave to us, both in Yaroslavl and in the other cities. Both the officials and the people were extremely generous and warm, and I was very surprised by the degree to which, in fact, they like Americans and admire Americans. I suspect, and what we picked up from some conversations, is that this may go back to World War II, where they perceived America's help as being pivotal in the survival of their nation. And the fact that we're allies in that war meant a great deal to them. They admire our technology. They admire the advances that our society has made. And I think they admire our openness and informality as people. But in any case, I was personally surprised by the degree of openness and friendship which they expressed toward us. Of course, while we were there, the summit meeting was going on. And without exception, the people there were enthusiastic and delighted by the fact that Ronald Reagan was in Moscow. And in fact, they had many very kind words to say about Ronald Reagan himself. The other observation that I would make is that I was surprised by the degree of self-criticism which Soviet officials were prepared to make about their own society. Frankly, I thought that they would be there to tell us that everything is wonderful, and that certainly was not the case. For example, they are absolutely open in acknowledging that they are not a democratic society, and that those people we spoke to want to become a democratic society, and right now they are in the midst of an extraordinarily important and turbulent point in their history, at least some of them are, to try to determine how they go from where they are today to become a more open and democratic society. And I know that John Franco has in front of them a copy of the Moscow News, which is a publication that comes out in English, French, and a few other languages, including, I believe, Russian, which has some self-criticism and some debate, which is extraordinarily interesting and surprised many of us very much.
That was from 1988. And Bernie Sanders went to the Soviet Union with his wife Jane. They spend their honeymoon in the Soviet Union, and this was at a time, and the right wing went after Bernie in 2016, 2020 over there. Yeah, where did he go? They're going to Russia, this sort of thing. And here's the thing: he went to the Soviet Union on a goodwill tour. A lot of people were doing this at the time. Perestroika, Glasnost was taking place, and the Cold War was winding down. The INF treaty was signed, I believe that's what it's called, and those nukes were being scrapped and not aimed at each other anymore. Thanks to Hillary Clinton, the INF treaty got scrapped, and the nukes got aimed at each other again for the first time since the 1980s. But it suffice to say, Bernie and his wife went there on a goodwill tour. And he was describing a lot of aspects. And that video was kind of long, but it was describing aspects of society and life in the Soviet Union. And the right wing went after Bernie in the same way Bernie went after Trump for trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and the Ukraine, which I think is more than reasonable to say that, that the ethnic Russian area should be with Russia, and that the western part of the Ukraine, if they want to be friendly with the West, fine, short of joining NATO. Well, you're just giving everything that Putin wants. So I don't think it was unreasonable. In fact, the Ukraine would have gotten more had they dealt as good faith actors earlier. They're getting less because they got strong arm into just being defiant when all they had to do was negotiate early on. So that is my beef with Bernie on the foreign policy scale. And so, and I'm getting long-winded on that, but that's where I really been pissed off with Bernie this week. Now, where another area where, on the one hand, I want to be pissed off with Bernie, and there's a part of me that's pissed off with Bernie on this next tactic or next issue, but it has nothing to do with foreign policy, but dealing with our labor movement and how to go forward. And I was pissed with Bernie because I heard it from the perspective I've heard it from the perspective here on the left, and good faith actors, voices that they were correct largely what they have to say. That Bernie was having this conference in places like Omaha, Nebraska, and places like that, to places where that went to Biden in 2020, that has a Republican member of Congress now, to go and to address labor concerns. And do I think it's a way to try to possibly sheep herd people into the Democratic Party? Partly yes and no. I do think that maybe the timing is sus, because it was at the same time the Workers' Strike Back conference was taking place, and with Kshama Sawant's group, and they're not focusing on working within electoral politics for the most part, whereas Bernie Sanders is a little more on the electoral side of the situation, and unfortunately is to work within the Democratic Party. I like what Ron Placone said. I'll share that tweet. Okay, give me a second here. And I saw what he said, and I was like, that's actually a good way to look at it. He always seems to be a voice of reason. What happened in Seattle this weekend is great. What happened in Omaha and Iowa, also great. Protests erupting all around the country. Yes, it all reminds me of a wise, whole, steady lyric. It's time for the true seeing leader to forget where they differ and think big picture. I'm going to go and say that Ron Placone is right. I'm not going to fault Bernie as much on this one as I did with the foreign policy thing. I still think that Bernie was sus to do this when he could have worked with Kshama Sawant. I see no harm with working with Kshama Sawant if he's going to do this as a good faith actor. And I would see no reason why Kshama Sawant would say, she wouldn't disallow it if she thought he's going to come in as a good faith actor. As a betting man for myself, I would say that the Kshama Sawant conference has more validity. Because, whether I don't necessarily think it's the cynical sheep herding that some people claim it is, but it is cynical enough that it's something that's rehashed. It's something that is to get people's hope. It's the Lucy with the football effect. And in some ways, I think it's Bernie trying to be relevant. And, being relevant when there's, when he just needs to just focus on retiring. Now, Bernie wants to be relevant. Bernie needs to go and be a wrecking ball on the way out. We'd be cheering it on, I'm sure. I really wish he would. But anyway, I'll share this with y'all. This is from Due Dissidence. I didn't watch the entire Due Dissidence this past weekend, of course. But actually, what I'm going to do is I'll play the Bernie Sanders one first. Then I'll follow with the Due Dissidence one. We'll compare.
I'm Hannah McElry downtown, where it's a packed house at the Marriott as our neighbors gather to hear U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders speak.
Thank you, Omaha!
The much-anticipated event was supposed to be held at the Laborers Union. However, so many of our neighbors signed up to attend, the event had to be moved to the Marriott downtown. Hundreds of community members filed into the Marriott ballroom. So many, an overflow area was set up in the hallway.
the working families of our country in Vermont, Nebraska, all over this country are struggling to just make ends meet. All over this country, major housing crisis. All over this country, major healthcare crisis. All over this country, the price of food going up at the grocery store.
Sanders received roaring cheers as he discussed the multitude of topics, including women's rights, climate change, federal funding, Medicare, and taking care of working class people. Community members tell me they're thankful that Bernie Sanders is speaking up about what they believe is government overreach and are encouraging other state representatives to do the same. At 10th and Capitol, I'm Hannah McElroy, your downtown Omaha neighborhood reporter.
Again, rhetorically, what Bernie had to say, no problem. What he had to say, no problem with in as far as rhetoric is concerned. But just kind of like the been there, done that situation. So I mean, I'm not, and if I lived in Iowa, if I live in any of the neighboring states in Nebraska, would I have made it trouble to go? Possibly would have. I mean, at least to talk to rank and file union people. I used to be a rank and file union member myself, a member of the United Food Commercial Workers Local 204, which was a pretty weak union, but, I digress. But I live in North Carolina, and, unions are pretty weak in the South. They're weak everywhere, but they're exceptionally weak in the South. So if you happen to live in the South and you were lucky enough to join a union, you would know what I'm talking about. So anyway, let's go with the due dissidence video. And this is Kashama Sawant, and we'll play that, and I'll share my insights there. So
people who are also listening. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, there's working class people listening all over the place.
Thank you. Glad I nailed it.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
South Africa thing was funny.
Oh, yeah? I had to go over in the room because I couldn't hear
all
the
right,
reaction.
Shama, how do you feel about how it went?
I thought it was really fantastic. It was the breakout groups were good evidence that people are really thinking about things. And a lot of discussion and debate came up, which is important because that's when, people are engaging, when people push back and bring up their own ideas, and then we get to push back if we don't agree. But I think what's crystal clear to me from today is the hunger for actual strategy to win. I mean, I'll encapsulate everything for today from the words I heard from a woman who works at BFI4, which is Amazon's fulfillment center in Kent, which is a neighboring city. Big fulfillment center here, Amazon Center. And we've off and on talked to the workers there, but she was in my breakout group, and afterwards she's the just the emotion in her face, like, I want a strategy to fight Amazon. I hate Bezos so much. I don't have words to express it. I want to do something. I want to embolden my fellow workers to fight back. And so ultimately that's what it is. And I think what we need to gear up for is what I would call the hard shit of organizing. Organizing a rally like this is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's so goddamn hard to
Well, that's why we were very surprised you agreed to take part in our 3-hour roundtable about workers' co-ops. Now, which starting now.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, no.
Great event, Sean. Very impressive.
Yeah, but now, we need to actually organize it.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything, Keaton? Hang on. I'm gonna turn this around because the camera is really weird on that setting. Yeah, hang on. That's better.
Hey,
all right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. No, great job. Congratulations. I know that was probably, a real lift to organize, but as always, great job. It was the speakers were great. I thought on the whole it was great. It was fantastic. Went really well. And we had a lot of engagement here. So we'll rack up all the view counts and see how we did, but quite a bit of engagement here for sure.
That's fantastic. If I can just say one thing for any of your viewers who are listening and also for
Sure.
our conversation. I was just talking to Russell about how the thing that stood out to me is the hunger among working people for concrete strategies to get organized. And I was talking to this Amazon worker who works in the nearby fulfillment center, who's clearly itching for an actual avenue to beat back on Bezos. So I think the hard shit of organizing has to also happen, and that's part of why we organize this today. But I think concretely moving forward, one of the main things we're going to be doing through Worker Strike Back is really building up the labor caucus of Worker Strike Back, because most workers are not in union. So statistically speaking, we need an organization like Worker Strike Back that will actually share the labor history and the actual strategy, and then help workers talk to their co-workers, begin organizing in the workplace, and all the concrete stuff, which unfortunately the union movement's leadership is not doing. I mean, they're completely absent from organizing Amazon, as I was saying earlier. And then even inside the small proportion of the working class that is inside the union movement, they face the same problem. The leadership is not offering them any strategy for fight back. They've been sold out. So ultimately, I think the work that we can do in workplace organizing through Worker Strike Back, really explaining to our Worker Strike Back members how they should push back on the bosses, that's going to be crucial. So part of the work of the Labor Caucus will be also to develop organizing pamphlets, organizing toolkits. How, for example, a concrete question that came up yesterday, we had a meeting with the cause, the North Carolina Amazon workers who tried for a union but failed. They are trying to learn from the setback, like what needs to be done. And one of the things concretely that needs to be overcome is how Amazon has a very systematic program to separate workers and isolate them on the workplace. It's not like a shop floor where everybody's on assembly line and you can talk to one another and you have a shop steward, for the coming union and all that. It's very, very hard. So that we have to find a concrete way to how to make sure that these workers can come out of that isolation. It's not like I have all the answers right now. I'm talking about this is the stuff we have to work on, and we will be working on.
All right. Well, congratulations again, Shama. Well done as always. And then you guys got the convention tomorrow, which we will not be streaming, but Russell will be there and we'll be reporting on that as well.
And thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
very impressive. An organization reflects its leadership. It speaks very well of your leadership that this was an event of such diversity and solidarity.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It was really great.
Hi.
Yeah, man. I thought the speeches were on a whole really good.
Anyway, that was Kashama was there on Due Dissonance talking to Keaton and Russell about the event and everything. And honestly, with the work that she's done with Worker Strike Back, the work that she's done in the last couple of years with Worker Strike Back is a hell of a lot more important than we got to go and fight the 1%. It's time for the revolution. That's my bad Bernie impression. I'm sorry. But the point I'm trying to make is, Bernie's done. He's done. I've always argued. When did the Bernie movement? When was the final nail on the coffin for the Bernie movement? I would argue that might have been the rejection of force to vote. And not that Bernie was directly involved in any way, shape, or form, but who supported force to vote in late 2020, early 2021 were the most hardcore baristas, that's not the correct word, the most strident Bernie Sanders type supporters out there. And basically, I mean, yeah, it was people from the Bernie movement, like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's go and make life miserable for Nancy Pelosi, which I'm for. Even that's all would have resulted in, that would have been enough to inspire me to do force the vote. So anyway, the thing about it is that I think that the Bernie movement is done. He wants to be relevant, but sounding like Rachel Maddow on foreign policy, like he did, just made my blood pressure go up. So I mean, I don't do the apologetics for Bernie like I used to. I mean, and again, I don't wish him any harm. I don't hate the guy, but the time is gone, and he knows it, and he wants that sense of purpose. So, and that's what it comes down to. So, I'm going to play one last little clip here. The Still Do Dissidents and Brianna Joy Gray and Jill Stein joins in. I will share my perspective as on that. So we'll go ahead and play that right now.
TYT left audience that you can call it that.
Sorry,
I did mention we have a surprise guest at 5:30, and we will now deliver on that surprise guest. You all know her, host of the Bad Faith podcast, former co-host at The Hill Rising. Whatever happened there, as they say. Brianna Joy Gray. Brianna, what's up?
I'm doing well. It's good to be with you guys.
Great.
Be still my heart.
Great to be with you. Yes. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. I appreciate it so much.
I wish I could be there in person with you, Russ.
The last time I saw you, you were being shouted at by Constantine Cassim.
That was the first effort to get me fired, was trying to make clips from that event, which were in no way remarkable or problematic, go viral in an effort to get me fired from the Hill. So 2 bites to the apple. What can I say? The Zionists are getting weak. 2 bites to the apple and finally ousted me.
Yeah, Brianna Joy Gray talks about getting fired from the Hill, and I'm still mad at the Hill for what they did to her last year. The conservatives sit there and talk about cancel culture against conservatives and against the people on the right, but when the cancel culture is imposed on people on the left, there's no concern. There is no concern and everything. I'm consistent. I don't believe in cancel culture against anyone. You can have your horrible opinions. Her opinions weren't horrible. Just about every opinion she has is beyond wonderful. But I'm talking about when the right wing uttered their horrible opinions. I don't think those words should get somebody fired or have their lives ruined over it. But I do think that when the right wing make these horrific, shitty remarks, you call them out on it, you go and mock them, make fun of what they have to say, but ruin their lives. But what the Hill did to Brianna Gray, fuck the Hill. That's what I got to say. Fuck the Hill, because Brianna Joy Gray, she as I said, I would love to see her run for president one day. I would.
Yeah. That was a rough and eye-opening weekend. I was there the whole weekend. And
what was it? Yeah, so go ahead.
In my personal, honestly, I mean, we talked about this a little when we were on your show. In my frustration with liberals hiding behind identity politics, I had taken that crew a lot more seriously than I should have until I went to that conference. And it was very, very eye-opening how hypocritical all of their supposed stances on free speech and open debate actually were. And particularly when I saw how their ideas about foreign policy literally could have come off Antony Blinken's desk. Like there was no daylight between them and Biden's State Department at all. They had the whole display about Uyghur slave labor. Yo, man, we got slave labor right here. Right here.
I don't know how you did it. I mean, it's an interesting thing. Like I came onto the scene as a journalist in large part writing about the weaponization of identity. And no one can credibly accuse me of not being on the vanguard of, frankly, calling out the way the Democratic Party is using Black and brown people and women and gay people, et cetera, as a human shield to avoid offering substantive material politics. That being said, I think there has been some slippage in certain parts of the left to, moving from I think a good faith and necessary critique of the way identities have been weaponized to like not guarding enough against the ways that identity continues to be exploited by the right in the form of racism and sexism and bigotry and homophobia, to galvanize a different segment of the population and to have a defense against that. And now that Trump and Musk and all these people are here, very openly trading in these widely, roundly discredited IQ-based talking points. I mean, the writing is on the wall. I did an episode about this a couple of weeks ago with Professor. Is there a book behind me? With a professor who wrote about this very issue and the parallels between the contemporary eugenics movement that is emerging and the eugenics movement of the 19th century. And the name of the game is, we might think it's innocuous, like I think IQ tests are real, or I think IQ tests aren't accurate predictors of intelligence, but that's kind of immaterial. What they want to do is try to create a different hierarchy of substantive value that's based on something other than your intrinsic rights as a human being or your rights under the Constitution. They want to turn it into a merit framework, which seems fair until you start to realize that your ability to eat, be housed, have healthcare, et cetera, are all based on whether some wealthiest guy in the history of the world thinks you have an IQ high enough to deserve the things that we have come to understand as either constitutional rights or what I would prefer is human rights that are intrinsic and inalienable. So that's the name of the game. And it's hard to address that and push back against that and fight back meaningfully without understanding all of the social science that is about race and about gender and about all of this stuff that has been under attack, sometimes rightly, but sometimes there's been some overreach over the past few years. And I don't think it's an accident that the Christopher Rufos of the world came after a certain kind of analysis. Yes, there are these excesses on the edges, which need to be taken down because they discredit the whole thing. But there also is a substantive analysis of like decades and decades of research as to why eugenics is bad, actually. That also is the baby that's being thrown out with the bathwater when they do things like in these humanities departments.
I think that with a lot of this stuff, like Professor Zenkis just brought up, not throwing trans people under the bus, and that's come up at this conference. There are quite a few trans people running it, and I think we're talking about two different things. I think there's a legitimate human rights movement, and I think there are grifters who have capitalized on a legitimate concern to sell books, to sell speeches, to sell consultancies to corporations looking to run cover for and protect themselves against lawsuits. And I think that has, unfortunately, because the corporate media and the Democratic Party had an interest in putting that front and center in the public mind. That is what those movements are. And it's hurt those communities most of all. Because now I think for a lot of people, statements that would have been considered innocuous even 10 years ago, as soon as they hear it, they go, they're woke.
Yeah,
very true. It's amazing. Class reductionism is woke to these people on the far right today. And as I said, I kind of look at some of the goofiness when wokeness is weaponized by the left, and it should not be weaponized because it comes back to bite the left in the ass. But let's keep it real. When I'm not saying every conservative and every right-wing person, but there's folks, some conservatives that talk about woke this and woke that, and they have a one-track mind about woke this and woke that, and everything they don't like is woke, and they try to shut people up. I'll sit there and talk about Medicare for all, for example. Oh, that's woke. I mean, they think that a basic function of democracy that's practiced by America's closest Western allies is woke. Something that's been in effect from anywhere from 50 to 100 years if not more, in the West, is woke to these people, and it's because the flawed right-wing Overton window, a far right-wing Overton window that we suffer from in this country, and it's affected everything: labor, it's affected the economy, it's affected a lot of social institutions. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, it's worse than that, Russ. I mean, they're fully out here doing race science. I mean, they're fully on Twitter, like fully Elon Musk, not like a fringe account, not like, this is not. So
everyone's autistic over there. They're all throwing Nazis.
Yeah, Bannon did it again, just as a troll. Just thought he would just test the waters. Yeah.
Bannon is out here saying anti-Zionist Jews are the biggest threat in the world and inciting violence against them.
Yep.
Right.
Which we take personally, obviously. Yeah.
I mean, I tweeted earlier, like between the Ashkenazi Jewish guy, Israeli guy who shot the two Mizrahi Jews, thinking that they were Palestinians. The one with the most recent one,
Dr. Stein, I could say hi to Brianna.
Hey, Brianna.
Hi, Dr. Stein. How are you?
Good to see you. You've been on lots of minds and hearts today here at this really wonderful meeting. We're sending a lot of love for all that you do.
Well, it's reciprocal. I wish I could be there. I'm very excited to see and to hear more about all that's going on from the two of you as well. I mean, you as well, obviously, Dr. Stein. But
thank you.
We'll have to get you back on the podcast soon, maybe for a debrief about all of this, maybe with Shama.
Hey, there you go. That's something.
It's awesome, and thank you for lifting it up, Brianna, for that interview that we did, and all the time and what you do. But it's so exciting to me. It just feels like it is the fulfillment. It's kind of like beyond our wildest dreams, how much this is clicking right now. People so want this to happen. And it feels like the work that we did in the campaign of just sort of, road testing this. It worked so well. And it is so time urgent. And people just are desperate right now. So it's very exciting.
I feel it. I did Josh Ciarella's podcast we recorded it way back in like mid-January, but it just came out, and I noticed that a lot of his audience are the kind of people who have not been very appreciative or respectful of me and my ideas about needing to abandon the Democratic Party. But after that interview, I looked at the comments, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I hated Brianna, but she's making some points. Yes, I agree. I think the Democratic Party is over." And
Yes, and the Democratic Party is in fact over, and I was glad to see Jill Stein up there because I will never ever be sorry that I voted for Jill Stein in 2024, and I will never be sorry that I voted for Jill Stein in 2016, and I would do it again. So just wanted to say that, so what I'm going to do. So I'll give you my final thoughts here. As I said, in relation to Breonna Joy Gray, she was one of the best people in the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020. Wearing Rokanas, telling Bernie Sanders to basically capitulate to Joe Biden. She was urging Bernie Sanders to keep fighting to the bitter end. And she is a fighter on every count and everything. Anyway, and people should, Bernie should be listening more to a Breonna Joy Gray than a Hillary Clinton type. I mean, he should be listening more. He should be listening more to the Kshama Sawants and the Breonna Joy Grays and the Jill Steins, and listen less to the Joe Bidens, to the Hillary Clintons and the Kamala Harrises out there. And that is basically my point right there. So, and until Bernie realizes that lesson, a lot of us are going to be critical of him at the end of the day. And so anyway, I want to go and I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss anybody. So I'm going to be out of here in a minute because I got to go to work. But I want to give out shout outs to everyone here. Miguel, great seeing you here. Yari Rivas, great seeing you here. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show, great seeing you here. Waiting for you to do another video again soon, hopefully. Greg Walker joined Third Party, great seeing you here. Truth Can't Be Silenced, great seeing you here as well. Let's see, who do we have? Desert Mantis, always a pleasure. Let's see, who else do we have here? Matt, let's see, Matt Johns, blessings, absolutely. This is what I'm going to do for now on, to make sure I don't miss anybody when I have quite a few people that shows up here. Earl, how are you doing today? Bernie's Russiagated after being Russiagated. Fucking pathetic. Very true. Very true. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and see who else we have. Anybody else that showed up, I will acknowledge their presence, whether I agree with them or not. This is not a Russian channel, Mike P., whoever you are. This is not a Russian channel. It's not a Ukrainian channel either. This is an American socialist channel. Extra Bulla, how are you doing, Warren? Hopefully you'll be back on Wednesday. Is that the case? Are you going to be back on Wednesday? Let's see. We have here. I love this format. Lucky Eyes, how are you doing? If I butchered a name, please accept my sincerest apology. And let's see. And I'm hoping I didn't forget anybody. We have here Sustained Damp. Whoever you are, hello, how are you doing? And we have here. All right. Anybody else? Stephanie. And how are you doing today? So I'm glad to see everybody here. Listen, I'm going to go in a minute, but I wanted to do this. This ran a little longer than it needed to. And I was a little tired too. So that explains a lot right there about me. Hold on a second here. Anyway, right now, I was just going to say that I'll be back tomorrow night around 10 o'clock, more or less, unless there's a time change. I'm usually off on Tuesdays, and I figure I owe y'all another video. So I should be doing a live stream tomorrow tomorrow night at 10. I'll be doing a live following night at 7:30, and again on Thursday at 7:30. So y'all will be seeing plenty of me this week. So what else do I have to say before I go? Thank you for supporting me all these years. Channels have grown. We're not at 1 million. We're not at 100,000. We're not even at 10,000. But I like where we're at right now. At 916. That's last count. So if you know anybody, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you know anybody that be interested in listening to a weirdo like me, urge them to subscribe to my channel if you don't mind. I'm getting closer to 1,000. So let's see what we can do to get to 1,000. What else I got to say? Yes, and thank you, honestly, all these years of support for this channel. Thank you for your support. Thank you for putting up with me. And I am glad I'm here to talk to y'all because honestly, I think about most of y'all. I mean, the majority of y'all I never met. But I do know some of y'all to some degree. I mean, online we communicate and everything. And I think the world, y'all know who you are. I think the world, y'all, and I appreciate your support. I appreciate your help, and we're all in this together. Even if you're not live streaming, your participation here on the chat lines is a form of it. And you should give it a shot as far as forming your own channels and all of that, and and get a little community for yourself. You'll appreciate getting a lot of shit out of your chest. That's kind of why I do it now, to get stuff out of my chest, because I used to have it pent up all the time on me and everything. So let me just say that if you like what you heard, please press like and comment anyway. If you disagree with what I have to say, feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show on all my platforms, if you don't mind. And I would like to thank Chanda and Oz. Saturday night they were on fire on Beauty and Beast. Saturday night, they were on fire with their podcasts, and I am very tired. I'm going to go get some no dose in me in a few minutes and get a cup of coffee. But anyway, reject corporate media because they have nothing to offer. Free Ed Snowden. Free Palestine. Free healthcare for all. Protect free speech absolutism for our own self-preservation. And, oh yeah, until next time, fuck Benjamin Netanyahu. Y'all have a good night. One last thing. Shane Copeland from KRTD, formerly of KRTD Media, had a tumor a few days ago, had to go to the hospital, and his tumor, I think it's been removed, and he is doing well. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the show. Also, if you can, to help out Chanda, Masta, who's recovering from lung cancer, just go ahead and do what you can to help her out, and keep both Chanda Masta and Sean Coughlin in your thoughts and prayers. I am going to go now. Y'all take care. Have a good night.